Hey, listener. Looks like you're back for this special week of Pastor with No Answers. It appears as if you get a lot out of hearing about other people's misfortunes. I bet when you hear about crazy people, it makes you feel a little better about yourself. And you know, deep down in my heart that's healed, about 8% from all my torturous thoughts that plagued my life for a couple decades, I think it's okay that my stories have that effect on you. I'm kind of happy about it. As happy as a dark, wounded heart can be, of course. Well, you get to hear from friend number 2 today. Don't forget that Fundamentalist, Stories of a Mentally Ill, Obsessive, Compulsive, Legalistic Youth Group Kid Turned Pastor is available now on Amazon and Kindle version, and it's on sale for $4.99. And if you want the paper copy, it's 20% off at badchristianmedia.com using promo code PWNAL at checkout. All right, Scott Sinclair. Most people, your close friends, know you as Dumpy, and I'm happy to say that you're one of my closest friends I've ever had my whole entire life. Met you back in 1995, 21 years ago. Oh my gosh.
It's been a minute.
21 years ago. So here, it's crazy because here we are, super close friends. We haven't lost touch. If you're going through something super difficult in life, I'm going to hear about it. Vice versa. I think probably early on in our relationship, you probably had doubts about that. And, we're talking about a book that you just read, and it depicts my life from a child through college, which is where you and I hung out a lot, and then into a lot of my adulthood. And so a lot of stories in college that, a lot of my college buddies obviously will, have a more clear reference point. But I remember a lot of my depression, a lot of the stuff that I went through, deeply troubled. I was hanging out with you a lot, so maybe you were contributing to it. I don't know.
Probably so.
I remember one situation in particular, and I think I want to guess that after this happened, you probably thought, Joey and I, we're not going to be that close of friends. Like this is just messed up. So what happened? I know you remember clearly. Me, you, my girlfriend at the time, and her cousin, who is still close friends with us as well, we're all hanging out, and there's a top bunk that my girlfriend's up on with me, and we're leaning up against the wall watching TV. Well, you hop up there, sit on the other side of her, and you got your arm around her. Because she's your buddy too, and to you, it's just like a bunch of buddies hanging out. This is fun, and just a wave of frustration, resentment, confusion, like a darkness settles on me. I'm like, what in the world is going on? What happened to my friend Dumpy, who's got my back? Why would he be doing this right now? And it just consumed me. And I would even say this is at a time when I did not know that not only did I not understand depression and that I was going through it, but I also had really no gauge of my irrational thinking and just how things can just blow up in my mind that make very little sense. So I remember shortly afterwards you went back to your room, and I just sat there perplexed, and I was like, man, I've got to talk to him about this, because otherwise, I'm just not going to be able to, have a normal relationship with them. So I remember, going over to your room, and I think it's crazy. I remember very clearly you were on the phone, so I talked to your roommate, and I said, I really need to talk to Scott. He could tell I was really upset, and he said, what's going on? I actually took him outside, and I told him exactly what I was thinking, and he was like, no, man, no. So basically, I thought you were macking on a girl that was my girlfriend that you considered friend, and I was just like, what in the world is going on? One of my best friends is trying to hit on my girlfriend in front of me, and he's not saying he's sorry. He's I mean, this is like a slap in my face. Like, when I confronted you, and I know not everybody's memory is like mine, with details and stuff like that, but do you remember what your reaction was?
A little, again, that was 20-ish years ago. But, as you talk, I do remember like weird details. I remember approximately where we were standing. I remember the railing.
Now, you did take off all your clothes when you were up there, so that added to my frustration.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I was just trying to show you things. No, but no, I do remember, like, at first, I thought you might have been joking. I thought, because you were real trippy and goofy, and I thought, seriously? I was kind of waiting for the punchline. And then I was so surprised because I saw her in a sisterly buddy kind of role,
right.
A relationship. And, if I was wanting to mac on her, I wouldn't have done it when you were sitting there, because I had other opportunities for that. So, yeah, I really thought this is not real for a while.
Yeah.
And then when I realized you were serious, of course, I guess I felt guilty. Like, God, what did I do wrong? And do I need to own any of this? What do I need to own? I was just pretty confused. So I was certainly taken aback, shocked.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I do think that I probably maybe doubted the relationship a little bit. I was like, I thought we were cool, and I don't.
Yeah, homeboy status had to be pretty dim right there. I mean, you had to be like, wait a second. Yeah.
And if it may have been another scenario, but I feel like I remember us riding around in my car a little bit.
Yeah. You said hop in the car. Like, it was just like, we got to talk.
Yeah, and I felt like we kind of had to get it out, but it was weird, and at the time, as we talked a little, and I've read the book, there are things and signs and things that I did not see at the time because I was, 18, 19, very self-centered.
Well, I didn't see him either.
Yeah, looking at it now, I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Or but at the time, I guess I was so self-absorbed that I wasn't looking at other people and trying to figure them out.
Yeah, and some people listening, they may be thinking, okay, wait a second. I mean, it's super irrational. Probably not. I mean, you just had, Joey just had a miscalculation in his thinking. No big deal. People make mistakes like that. But here's why that's wrong. I remember sitting in a theater with the same girl, Jennifer, and we were actually watching a Power Rangers movie. It was like the first big Power Rangers movie, and she was oohing and ahhing over how cute a couple of the actors were. And when we got out of that movie theater, I was just so deflated, felt rejected. I was pissed at her. I wouldn't talk to her. And she just was like, what in the world is going wrong? Like, we went into that movie totally cool. Now we're leaving. And she was just clueless. And I was just torn up about her saying that two freaking actors on a Power Rangers movie were nice looking. I mean, just crazy.
That should have been your sign right there to let her go, though. As your friend, I should tell you that.
So, reading through this book, like, you said that, some of this stuff kind of makes sense now, but you were too young to see that, which, I mean, even my own brother said the same thing. He said that he thinks that I did a pretty good job masking it. And obviously, you and I are talking about a season in my life where I didn't know what was going on in my mind. I didn't understand that there was some illness there. But were you surprised by any of the content in the book? Like, did any of it have you thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is some pretty messed up stuff"?
I'll say it like this: I don't necessarily think the things I read were messed up stuff. There were things that I could identify with. There are things that I think that a lot of people think and experience and go through, but they don't necessarily put it on paper.
Yeah.
And necessarily talk about it. Just some of the things that you wrote about how, you had to say your prayers just right. And you had a checklist in your drawer, and those types of things. I mean, you hid them very well, like your brother said. I never saw those things, but I can kind of identify because there are certain things that I do I had that too. But I guess I don't even think about them enough to think it's a problem. But then I guess when I read about some of the things that you shared, thinking, man, I can identify with that. That is weird, and it made me think about some of the things that I do that maybe that's a little odd.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, even like, and as far as surprising things, I had heard about you getting your dad's advice before your wedding and that kind of thing.
Right.
But for someone who has not heard that, they would read that. And I think in the beginning, the first time I heard it, I read it and I was like, man, that is hilarious. And I, thinking about your dad and what his reaction had to be. But at the same time, if you kind of step back and think about it, that's really sad that for whatever reason, if you want to say it was because of the impact of the church or your interpretation of Scripture, that you felt that way as a young man, and that you needed that kind of validation. That's just, it's kind of sad that for whatever set that up, it's hilarious, but it's also sad.
That was one surprise that came out of me actually writing this book, was the deep feeling of sadness for myself at that age. And it's a feeling that I can't really, I'll try to put into words, but it's hard because you would think that that's coming across as like, hey, people, feel bad for me, but it's not something that I'm going around. Well, yeah, I guess I am doing that right now, telling people about it, but it really is a sadness for someone that doesn't exist anymore. Like, that dude is gone, but my heart does go out to him because he still exists in my head. And I'm learning more and more about the brain and the mind through some counseling and all that stuff. And I mean, some people would even put it into these sorts of words, like there are certain seasons of life where that person in the past, we have to figure out in the present how to release them, like let them go, free them, and all that stuff. Which I don't feel that at all. But writing this stuff, man, I'm laughing one second and I'm really kind of sad the other second, because there are definitely times when I think about, even college, man, I've got so many good memories, but it was all tainted pretty heavily. Like there was always somewhat of a darkness, over everything. So, like, do you remember early on, did you think that, like, what was your assessment of me with how strict I was with the music I listened to, the movies that I watched? I mean, there were, like, obviously your favorite movie at the time was Friday. I wouldn't watch it with you. You talked up Pulp Fiction. I would not watch it with you. You come over to our apartment, and all the bands I'm listening to, for the most part, you never heard of because they're on Tooth and Nail Records and a bunch of, Christian labels. So what did you think about all that?
Yeah, I think that, for myself, I was coming from a small town, only knew of, really popular music and movies and that kind of thing. And so I had a pretty sheltered view in a way, but my parents weren't like you've talked about with yours. They didn't, they certainly didn't want me watching some things, but they didn't say I had to only listen to Christian radio or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so when I met you, I didn't see it as weird. At first I didn't see it as bad. I just saw it as different. And in trying to figure out who I was, I thought, in a way, well, it's kind of cool, because I've never heard of these bands, never heard of this stuff. But then when I saw that you weren't interested and willing to check out the stuff that I was sharing and really be interested in it, that was kind of a downer. Because I know some of the stuff I heard that you had, I liked it,
right,
but I didn't hear it enough to really want to check it out more,
Right.
But I remember that was weird. And I don't think at the time I didn't think, well, God, this guy, he's like all the other Christians I knew growing up. But, as far as from a legalistic point of view, growing up, church meant certain things in my family. We've talked about this before. I was raised, with great morals and a respect for God, but it wasn't necessarily about a relationship.
Yeah.
And,
dude, you were someone in my mind, by the way, that, I'm probably telling you this for the first time, but you fell in the category of one of the good guys that was going to burn in hell. Like,
I'm sure.
In my mind, I was like, this is a guy that thinks that he's doing everything right, but there's no relationship there. And what the hell am I doing by not telling him this?
Right.
I need to sit him down and say, dude, you're lost. You're going to burn in hell forever. Like you were one of those friends. I was like, I can't believe he's going to be lost forever.
Yeah. And I think that, had that conversation happened at that time, I don't know how I would have taken it. I might have told you to get out of my room, you and the girl that I don't care about, and don't come back. But no, I think that I just saw everything as, all right, this is a kid from a different town, different experience. This is a liberal arts school, lots of different people. I was just trying to kind of open up my mind and be open to different people. And I saw you in that category. And, out where we lived, there were a lot of different people. We weren't in the regular freshman dorms. And so I just looked at it as, well, different, not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
And I just kind of took things for how they were, and I felt like, well, we're buds, but there's a certain level, like my buddies back home that I have these things in common with as far as music and that kind of stuff. I have that in common with them, but I don't have that with Joey. It's just different, different things, different things in common. But
that is interesting. Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
No, it was kind of weird because clothing, music, everything that you and your girlfriend at the time, you guys and your cousin, her cousin, John, they did listen to different things, and that was just something that it wasn't just you. It was, I grouped you all together.
Yeah.
You all were together, so I felt like, I don't know, it wasn't just like this is just this guy who's different. It was like this whole crew, and you kind of all came as a package deal. You know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's weird. Like you didn't say this specifically, but it is like my character was kind of interesting because I don't think too many people would have seen me as like a Christian stuck in the mud fundamentalist guy, which I really was. But I think how I carried myself, the fact that I was super goofy, super loose, maybe even warm and friendly, happy-go-lucky when I wasn't depressed. Those sorts of things didn't clue people in on the fundamentalist side. But I mean, here's how crazy my memory is. I actually remember in front of your roommate calling someone like I was like, oh my gosh, he's badass. But instead of badass, I said bad behind. Oh my gosh, that dude's a bad behind. And he was like, dude, at least say bad butt.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't even say badass.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, because at the same time, there were things you were doing, like we were prank phone calling people and scaring girls and doing things that are just, not cool, not okay in the moment. I mean, we thought they were funny, but
that stuff wasn't a sin to me, though. In my mind, it was just cutting around. If it was a sin, I would not have. I would have been trying not to do them. What do you think about the church and all of this? Reading about some of the church background that I went through, and as a friend of mine that cares about me, like, do you think about the church and man, that sucks how the church screwed Joey over, or do you just see it more as, no, Joey had a sick brain, you can't put that on the church?
I don't see it in absolutes. It's not totally one or the other.
Yeah.
I think it's both. And at the time, I probably saw it back then. I saw it more as his upbringing or the church versus a sick mind.
Yeah.
Because I don't think, at that age, I guess I had heard of some examples of mental illness, but I didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't have walked around saying, oh, this kid's got this and this diagnosis and this. That just didn't enter my mind. But I do think that, kind of like I alluded to earlier, I think that, I saw church as almost the haves and the have-nots. And I was raised that, church, that's just maybe for more wealthy people who kind because, my parents, they weren't the most social. They didn't really go to church. We didn't dress up. That just wasn't our thing. Just working class people, and who did right by their family. But as far as, being involved in the church, that just wasn't on the priority list.
Yeah.
And so I guess for looking at you, I just kind of put you in that category of, well, I guess you were raised to be one of those people. And I think that, I know in the book you mentioned like the youth group kids, staying away from the bad people. And I didn't necessarily feel like a bad person, but I knew that I didn't fit in with the youth group people. So right. I was cool just not being that, not necessarily being a bad person, but not being that. But I think that I saw you as somebody who was at least open to, having friendships and being cool with people who weren't in that club. But I think what was kind of neat is the change, because, and not that you're better or worse now because you do say ass or whatever, but I remember this story once. There was the funny lunch guy in the cafeteria. Yeah. If you remember that guy, we my roommate and I think it was just two of us, maybe somebody else, but we went with somebody and we bought beer one night. And I remember like, there are friends down there, but we can't let them know because they won't be our friends and they'll think bad of us. So I remember sneaking the beer upstairs, and the guy from the lunch room, he saw us at the gas station.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, dude, and he called out the kind of beer we were drinking and stuff. And I was just trying to hide, because I felt like I was doing something wrong, but, at least in your eyes.
Yeah.
And I remember he saw us when we were all in the cafeteria together, and he started to try to bring it up and talk about it. And I was like, shh, no, because I was, I guess, embarrassed, but I also felt guilty, and I felt like I'd be judged, you know, which I guess I would have. But it was just a part of the, college experience. I was just trying to figure out who I was, and am I this straight-laced Bible-thumping guy? Am I a party guy? Who am I? I think that's all part of my own process. But for you, I looked at it as, some of the church, but also your upbringing. But I think what I thought was pretty cool is just a change I saw when we got older.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what year this was, but I don't know if you remember this. I think we were going to see a show, and I think we were with Farr, and we were driving. In my mind, we might have been like near Spartanburg or something. But I remember just talking about faith and what really mattered. And I just remember thinking, I didn't hear this from you, back in the day. This is not what I heard about church. And I can live with this. This would work for me. Just talking about the relationship with God. And it was different. It was a much more chill, laid back, more adult, less judgmental conversation.
Yeah.
And in that moment in your life, I don't know if you remember or not, but I don't know where you were as far as your journey up and down the roller coaster of mental illness. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really. I think I may remember that, but I wouldn't even say there was substantial change as much as that was probably the first time that I really talked to you about my faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the tragedy of my upbringing was I embraced grace, but it was just with a bunch of strings attached,
Yeah.
And so I could talk about grace and leave the strings attached off, but in my head they were still there.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Well, cool, man. Good hanging out. I know back in the day you were trying to figure things out with alcohol. It's crazy that you got 2 little girls and a wife, and you're trying to figure things out now with like whether or not you should go to strip clubs. You just got back from a strip club, right?
Actually, I worked there. I figured I'd make money doing it. No, that is a total joke. Might edit that out. Just saying. But no.
Well, I love you.
I actually work at a male strip club. Okay, I'll admit it. The money's good.
The money is good, man. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you
buddy.
for your time. Thanks for reading the book. And, yeah, man, we'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Oprah's going to pick it up. Sweet.